Silent Symphony. The Singapore Convention Center buzzed with anticipation. Tech giants from across the globe gathered for the annual Horizon Summit, where billion-dollar deals were casually discussed over premium coffee. Olivia Rhodes adjusted her earpiece and reviewed her notes one final time. "Just remember, Ms. Rhodes, Mr. Frost is extremely particular about accurate translations," her supervisor whispered. "The Japanese and Korean delegates are crucial to this merger." Olivia nodded, hiding her nervousness behind a professional smile. At 28, she was younger than most senior interpreters, but her gift for languages had accelerated her career. Fluent in Mandarin, Japanese, Korean, French, and Spanish, she understood not just words but cultural nuances that often got lost in translation. From her position at the side of the Grand Hall, she watched Jackson Frost enter. The room's energy shifted instantly. At 37, Frost had built Quantum Sphere from a startup into a tech empire. His reputation preceded him: brilliant, exacting, and utterly unmoved by failure or excuse. The business world had nicknamed him the Titan for his towering success and equally imposing demeanor. Unlike most billionaires who cultivated carefully crafted public personas, Frost seemed indifferent to his image. His recent divorce had only hardened his reputation as someone married to his work. Today, dressed in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, his expression remained neutral as he greeted various executives. The presentations began. Olivia slipped into the flow of languages, her voice a steady stream in the ears of the Korean delegation. Halfway through the morning session, tension erupted between a Japanese investor and a Korean executive over what appeared to be a miscommunication about intellectual property rights. "He's saying that the terms were never properly explained," the Korean executive argued, looking increasingly frustrated. Olivia recognized the cultural misunderstanding immediately. She gently intervened, explaining in both languages the subtle difference in expectations. In Korean business culture, this phrasing implies a continuing negotiation, while in Japanese, it suggests a final position, she clarified, adding a respectful explanation that preserved dignity for both parties. The tension dissolved. She hadn't noticed Jackson Frost watching this exchange with unexpected interest. During the lunch break, a heated discussion broke out between two delegates. Their English was limited, and emotions were escalating. Olivia approached calmly. "Gentlemen, perhaps I can help," she offered in Mandarin, then switching to Japanese. With gentle humor and diplomatic phrasing, she translated their concerns accurately while softening the confrontational edges. Within minutes, they were nodding in agreement. Across the room, Frost was engaged in conversation with investors but had positioned himself to observe the exchange. Something about the quiet interpreter had caught his attention. Not her appearance, though she was certainly striking with her warm brown eyes and subtle confidence, but her ability to navigate chaos with such grace. When their eyes met briefly, Olivia quickly looked away, returning to her duties. She had no idea that this momentary connection would soon upend everything she thought she knew about the man the world called the Titan, and about herself. The afternoon session was about to begin, and Olivia prepared her notes, unaware that by evening everything would change. Language of glances. The second day of the Horizon Summit arrived with thunderstorms battering Singapore's skyline. Olivia arrived early, reviewing technical terminology while watching raindrops race down the convention center's massive windows. Yesterday's successful mediation had earned her appreciative nods from the senior staff, but in her profession, you were only as good as your next translation. "Ms. Rhodes," a deep voice interrupted her thoughts. She turned to find Ethan Parker, Jackson Frost's chief of staff. "Mr. Frost has requested you specifically for the private negotiations this afternoon." Olivia's surprise must have shown on her face because Parker added, Your handling of yesterday's situation impressed him? That's rare. The private negotiations suite was intimidating. 14 executives representing billions in capital seated around a polished table. Jackson Frost sat at the head, his posture relaxed but vigilant. When Olivia entered, he acknowledged her with a slight nod. "Ms. Rhodes will be providing translation," he announced. "I trust everyone's confidential information will be accurately conveyed." For the next 3 hours, Olivia translated complex technical specifications and legal terminology. The Korean investors had concerns about implementation timelines. The Japanese partners worried about integration costs. Throughout, she felt Frost's analytical gaze occasionally settle on her. During a brief recess, Olivia stepped onto a balcony, overlooking Singapore's rain-soaked gardens. She needed a moment away from the tension-filled room. "Impressive work in there," came Frost's voice behind her. She hadn't heard him approach. "Thank you, Mr. Frost." She maintained professional distance. "You translated unacceptable risk threshold differently for each delegation. Why?" His question wasn't accusatory, but genuinely curious. Olivia considered her response carefully. Because in Korean business culture, focusing on the unacceptable aspect would create unnecessary resistance. "I emphasized the collaborative aspect of establishing thresholds together. For the Japanese delegation, precision in defining the exact risk parameters was more important." A hint of something, approval, flickered across his face. "You don't just translate words. Languages aren't just vocabulary and grammar, Mr. Frost. They're frameworks for how people understand reality." Before he could respond, Parker appeared, informing him of an urgent call. With a brief apology, Frost departed, leaving Olivia wondering about their strange interaction. The afternoon session grew tense when a disagreement erupted over market access timelines. The Korean executive, Mr. Sung, switched to his native language to express frustration, assuming only Olivia would understand. "Please tell this arrogant American that his unrealistic deadlines show disrespect for our processes," he said in Korean. Olivia faced a translator's nightmare, conveying the message's substance while maintaining professional diplomacy. Before she could formulate a response, Frost replied in perfect, if slightly accented, Korean. "I understand your concerns, Mr. Sung. Perhaps we could establish phased implementation targets instead?" The room fell silent. Olivia stared at Frost, who gave her the briefest, almost imperceptible smile. Later, as delegates reviewed documents, Frost leaned toward her. "I lived in Seoul for 3 years, developing our Asian markets, but your Korean is far more natural than mine." "Why request a translator, then?" she whispered. "Because I can understand the words but miss cultural subtleties. You caught nuances I would have missed." His admission seemed difficult for a man clearly unaccustomed to acknowledging limitations. Their conversation was interrupted when Parker burst into the room, whispering urgently to Frost. His expression hardened instantly. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize, but we need to conclude early. A situation requires my immediate attention." He stood abruptly, buttoning his jacket. "My team will reschedule." Without further explanation, he strode from the room, leaving confused executives and a strangely disappointed Olivia behind. The return thunder crashed outside as Olivia gathered her materials. The summit would continue tomorrow, but Frost's dramatic exit had effectively ended today's negotiations. Delegates dispersed, murmuring speculations about what emergency could pull away someone of his stature. "Market crash?" suggested one. "Corporate espionage," theorized another. Olivia remained professional, offering no opinion as she packed her tablet and reference materials. Her last task was returning confidential documents to the secure room. As she walked through the now quiet convention center, rain hammered against the windows like an urgent message. The security guard checked her credentials before allowing her into the document room. She was filing the last folder when the door opened behind her. Expecting the guard, she turned with a polite smile that froze when she saw Jackson Frost standing there, slightly disheveled as if he'd rushed back. "Mr. Frost? I thought you'd left for an emergency." She straightened, professional mask slipping back into place. "I did. It's been addressed." His typically perfect appearance showed signs of strain, tie loosened, a faint crease in his forehead. "You're still here." It wasn't quite a question, but Olivia answered anyway. "Just finishing up. Is there something you need translated?" Studied her for a moment. "No. I came back because I realized something in the car." He paused, seeming uncharacteristically uncertain. "I've sat through thousands of meetings with the best minds in tech. But you're the first person I've wanted to continue a conversation with after the meeting ended." Olivia blinked, sure she'd misheard. "I'm sorry? Have dinner with me tonight?" His direct approach matched everything she'd heard about him. No hesitation, no small talk. "Mr. Frost, Jackson," he corrected. "Jackson," she tried again. "That would be inappropriate. I'm working this event." "You're contracted through Universal Translations, not directly with my company. There's no conflict." Of course, he'd already analyzed the professional ethics. Olivia searched his face for signs this was some kind of test or business strategy. "Why me?" His expression softened slightly. "Because you see what others miss. Because you navigate complex situations with intelligence and grace. And because for the first time in years I'm curious about someone." The admission seemed to surprise even him. "Just dinner," he added. "Away from all this." He gestured vaguely at the corporate environment surrounding them. Against her better judgment, Olivia found herself nodding. Just dinner. But somewhere, public and normal, no private dining rooms or exclusive restaurants. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I can do normal." 2 hours later, Olivia found herself at a small hawker center in Singapore's Chinatown, surrounded by locals and the intoxicating aromas of street food. Jackson Frost, billionaire tech titan, sat across from her at a plastic table, jacket discarded, eating chili crab with his hands. "The emergency?" she asked after they'd settled in. He wiped his fingers on a paper napkin. "Security breach. Someone attempted to access our quantum encryption prototype specifications." "That sounds serious." "It was. It isn't anymore." His matter-of-fact tone suggested the consequences for whoever had attempted the breach would be severe. Their conversation shifted to languages. Frost spoke 4: English, Korean, Mandarin, and enough Japanese to negotiate, but admitted he envied her natural facility. "Languages came easier than people," she confessed. "Growing up with a diplomat father, we moved every few years. Books and languages were my constants." "Is that why you understand people so well? Because you had to adapt quickly?" Olivia considered this. "Maybe. When you're always the outsider, you learn to watch carefully. You notice patterns in how people communicate, what they say versus what they mean." For the first time, she saw genuine warmth in his eyes. "What do you see when you look at me? Someone who built walls so high they've forgotten there's a view on the other side?" Whispers and walls. 3 weeks after Singapore, Olivia stepped out of a black car onto New York's rain-slicked sidewalk. Jackson stood waiting under the awning of a small jazz club, looking simultaneously out of place and perfectly at ease in dark jeans and a cashmere sweater. This was their 4th meeting. She hesitated to call them dates. Each in a different city where their paths could, coincidentally, cross. "This doesn't seem like your usual scene," she commented as they entered the dimly lit space. "What do you think my usual scene is?" There was amusement in his voice. Boardrooms, tech conferences, probably a minimalist penthouse with voice-activated everything. He laughed, a sound she was hearing more frequently. Accurate about the penthouse. But this, he gestured toward the quartet setting up on stage. This was my scene before everything else. As they settled at a small table near the back, Jackson explained how jazz had gotten him through college, playing piano at clubs for extra money while coding during the day. His expression grew animated as he described the mathematics of improvisation, the structured freedom of the music. "You never mentioned this in any interview," Olivia noted. "The public version of me is carefully curated. Quantum Sphere needs the titan, not a jazz enthusiast who sometimes stays up all night working through composition problems." His phone buzzed. It had barely stopped since they arrived. With a grimace, he silenced it without looking. "You don't have to ignore work for me," she said. "I'm not. I'm prioritizing." The simplicity of his statement made her heart flutter unexpectedly. The music began, filling the space with complex harmonies. Under the table, his hand found hers, fingers intertwining, with quiet certainty. Later that night, walking along the Hudson River, Jackson grew quiet. "What's troubling you?" Olivia asked, reading the tension in his shoulders. "The board meeting tomorrow. Parker found evidence suggesting the Singapore security breach was orchestrated by someone internal." His jaw tightened. "Someone I trusted. I'm sorry." "Don't be. Trust is a liability in my position." Olivia stopped walking. "Is that what you really believe?" He turned to face her, expression guarded. "Experience has proven it repeatedly." "Then what is this?" She gestured between them. "If trust is impossible?" For a moment he seemed genuinely confused, as if he hadn't considered the contradiction. "This is different." "Why? Because I have nothing you need? No access to your company's secrets or valuable connections?" His silence confirmed her suspicion. "Jackson, people aren't algorithms you can debug or systems you can optimize for maximum security. Relationships require vulnerability." "Vulnerability. Got me a very public divorce and questions about my leadership capabilities," he countered, an edge creeping into his voice. "That wasn't vulnerability. That was poor judgment in who you trusted. There's a difference." They stood facing each other, the city lights reflecting in the river beside them. Finally, Jackson spoke, his voice quieter. "I don't know how to do this, Olivia. The patterns that made me successful in business make me—" He searched for the word. "Human?" she suggested gently. Something shifted in his expression, a wall beginning to crumble. "I want to try. With you." The following morning, Olivia woke to breaking news alerts. Photos of her and Jackson walking along the river, his hand holding hers, splashed across business and entertainment sites alike. "Titan tamed," read one headline. "Frost thaws for mystery woman," declared another. Her phone rang, her supervisor at Universal Translations. "Olivia, what have you done?" Fluent in trust. The fallout was swift and exactly as complicated as Olivia had feared. Universal Translations placed her on administrative leave pending an ethics review. Financial news outlets speculated whether Jackson's emotional entanglement signaled instability at Quantum Sphere. Their stock dipped temporarily before rallying. Jackson offered solutions with characteristic efficiency, legal representation, a position within his company, a strongly worded statement to her employers. Olivia refused them all. "I need to handle this my way," she insisted during a tense phone call. "Your help would only confirm their suspicions that I've compromised my professional integrity. This is absurd. We met after the contract concluded. Perception matters more than technicalities." She sighed, exhaustion evident in her voice. "Jackson, I need space to figure this out." The silence that followed carried weight. "Space," he repeated, the word flat. "I understand." But he didn't. In his world, problems were solved through direct action, resources applied until obstacles disappeared. Her request translated in his mind to rejection, confirmation of his belief that personal connections inevitably failed. For 2 weeks, they didn't speak. Olivia successfully challenged Universal's review, providing documentation that her contract had officially ended before her personal relationship with Jackson began. She accepted a position with a different firm, specializing in diplomatic translations. Jackson immersed himself in work, finalizing the merger that had brought them together. Board members noted his increased intensity, the return of the ruthless efficiency that had earned him his nickname. If they noticed the shadows beneath his eyes or his shorter-than-usual temper, none dared mention it. Then came the United Nations Technology Summit in Geneva. Olivia had been assigned to the main session, unaware that Quantum Sphere would be presenting their new quantum encryption system, a project now completed without the sabotage attempted in Singapore. She saw him before he noticed her, standing at the podium, commanding the room with quiet authority. Her heart contracted painfully. He looked thinner, more severe, his features sharpened by whatever battles he'd fought in their weeks apart. When he finally spotted her among the translators, his presentation faltered almost imperceptibly before he recovered, continuing without acknowledgement. After the session, Olivia remained at her station, gathering her materials as the hall emptied. She sensed, rather than heard him approach. "Your translation of quantum entanglement was technically perfect but missed the poetry of the concept," he said, the criticism so unexpected she almost laughed. "Perhaps you should have provided translator notes," she replied, turning to face him. They stood in silence, the vast hall empty around them. All the prepared speeches Olivia had rehearsed evaporated. "I almost called you 53 times, he admitted finally. "What stopped you?" "Fear." The raw honesty surprised them both. "I've built my life around calculated risks, but this—" He gestured between them. "This feels like jumping without analyzing the landing conditions." Olivia stepped closer. "Some things can't be calculated, Jackson. Some things you have to feel. I'm not good at that." "You're better than you think." She reached for his hand, gratified when he didn't pull away. "I didn't need space from you. I needed to solve a problem independently to maintain the person you were attracted to in the first place." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "The person who handles difficult situations with grace and doesn't need rescuing." She nodded. "Exactly." "I missed you," he said simply. "The world makes less sense without your translations." "Then let me translate something now." She stepped closer, her voice soft but clear. "I'm falling in love with you, Jackson Frost. Not with the Titan, not with the billionaire, but with the man who eats chili crab with his hands and understands the mathematics of jazz." He didn't respond immediately, and for a terrible moment, Olivia thought she'd misunderstood everything. Then his hand cupped her cheek, his thumb tracing her jawline with wonder. "I've been fluent in the language of systems and markets for decades," he said, "but you make me want to learn an entirely new vocabulary." "It's not that complicated," she whispered. "It starts with trust." "Trust," he repeated, as if testing the word. "I think I can learn that." 6 months later, at a small jazz club in New York, Jackson played piano publicly for the first time in 15 years while Olivia watched from a front-row table. His composition, titled Silent Symphony, moved through complex harmonies that spoke of barriers falling and new languages learned. When he joined her afterward, the titanium band on his left hand caught the light. A matching one graced her finger. No headlines had announced their quiet ceremony. No photographers had captured their vows. "What did you think?" he asked, the question vulnerable in a way that would have been impossible months before. "Some things," Olivia replied, taking his hand, "need no translation at all."